And wonderful afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining the webinar today. Today's webinar is about GSTR-1 returns. GST was implemented in India in the year 2017, and since then, Zoho Books was also GST compliant. So quickly, let's have a look at what GST and what is GSTR-1, and we'll get into the session today. So what is GST? GST is nothing but the goods and service tax, that is the indirect tax imposed on the supply of the goods and services. So what is GSTR-1 is the details of all the sales, that is the goods and the services that you have made sales for the respective period made by the registered taxpayer in the respective tax period other than the input service distributor, composition taxpayer, persons liable to collect TCS and deduct TTS, and non-resident taxable persons. Now let's see when the GSTR-1 returns has to be filed. So the registered taxpayers who are eligible for the quarterly filing will have the due date at the 13th of every month that succeeds the quarter. And those who have the monthly filing, the due date will be the 11th of the every next month. Additionally, I would also like to inform you that Zoho Books support both the GST filing, that is EVC method, and the DST filing method. Now let's see what is the agenda for today's session. So as we have already seen what is GST, the GST-1 overview, and now we will see how we can set up the GST filing in Zoho Books, then how we can file the GSTR-1s directly from the Zoho Books session, then we will end up with the recap. First step is to set the GST settings in the Zoho Books. First, you have to navigate to Zoho Books, click on Settings, and under the Taxes tab, you will be able to see all the GSTINs that you have added in your organization. When you click on the GSTIN added, here we have three parts, that is General Online Filing Settings and the Default Tax Preferences. First will be the GSTIN. So whatever is your GSTIN, it has to be added here, and make sure that the GSTIN is in the supported format, that is 15 digits, where the first 2 digits is the state code followed by your PAN and then some checksum of the digits. Once you enter the GSTIN in Zoho Books, the business legal name and the business trade name will be automatically popped up based on your GSTIN. Next will be the GST registered on date, where you have to enter the date from which you are GST registered for your organization. If your organization is eligible for the reverse charge in the sales transaction, you can enable this option, and if you have overseas trading, you can enable the import or export option. There are some cases where you would like to track the custom duty accounts or the transactions separately in a separate account. For that, you can make use of this options or the accounts listed here, and you can make use of the account to track them separately. Let's suppose if your organization is into digital services, you can enable the respective option and click on Save. So we are done with the generals part, and next we'll move on to online filing settle part. So this is the main part where you will be able to integrate your Zoho Books with the GST portal. That is, you will be able to connect them for the GST filing. Here, the GSTIN username is the username which you use to log into your GST portal, and that exactly has to be entered here in GSTIN username field. There are cases where GSTIN will be entered by some of the user under the username, but always make sure to enter the GSTIN username in the username tab. Next will be the reporting period. You can choose the reporting period based on your organization, that is either monthly or the quarterly. If suppose you are under the QRMP scheme, you can enable the QRMP scheme option here, where you can pay GSTR-3B monthly and file the returns quarterly. We also have an option to get the IFF report, which will help your customers to claim the ITC if they file their GSTR-1 on monthly basis. You can get this report under the report section under taxes IFF report. And next will be the generate first tax return from. You have to choose the exact period from which you will be filing GST returns directly from Zoho Books itself. Let's suppose you are going to file the GSTR-1 returns for December 2023 from Zoho Books. Then you have to choose December 2023 as your generate first tax return from period. Next is the GST filing approval process. That is, If you have many users in your organizations and any one of your user is going to file the returns and you want to have the approval process which has to be sent to the manager before you file the returns, then you have to enable the GST filing process where the user will be able to submit the transactions for the approval before filing the returns. The persons whom you choose here as an approver will receive all the notifications regarding the approval. So once you click on save, the next step what you have to do is you have to log into your GST portal. You will have an option called My Profile. There you have to click on My Profile, and then when you click on My Profile, you will get an option called Manage API Access. When you click on Manage API Access, you will be able to choose the duration for the eligibility of the API access. So the maximum period will be 30 days. You can choose 30 days here and click on Confirm. So once you click on confirm, then only your Zoho Books will be connected with the GST portal. So you will be able to file your returns directly from Zoho Books to GST portal. As we are done with setting up all these details in the online filing setting page, let's directly go to GST filing tab. So once you click on GST filing tab, you will be listed with all the GSTINs that you have added in your organization. Let's suppose you have multiple GSTINs, then you have to file the GSTR-1 returns for each GSTIN separately. There are cases where you will have multiple branches under the same GSTIN. For all those cases, only one single GSTR-1 filing is enough, because based on GSTIN only the filing will be initiated. In the overview page, you will be able to see the GSTIN for which you are going to file the returns, and by clicking on View Filing History option, it will help you to display the recent filed data for the respective GSTIN. Next, while clicking on View Summary, you will be navigated to the next page where your GSTR-3, 1, 2 and all the details will be listed here. Let's focus on GSTR-1 today. So in the GSTR-1 overview page, you will be able to see all the transactions that you have recorded for the respective period, then the transactions which are yet to be pushed under the unpushed tab, and your filing due date for the next respective reporting period. Even from here in the overview page, you will be able to push the transactions to the GSTIN, or you can also file the returns directly from the overview page itself. Let's suppose if you want to verify the transactions that are under the respective period, you can click on the All Transactions tab. So under the All Transaction tab, you will be navigated to the overview page. So here in the overview page, all the transactions that you have created for the respective period in Zoho Books will be listed. Also, please note that the transactions which involves the taxes will be taken, and if the transaction are in draft or the approval status in Zoho Books, it will not be involved here. The entries will be taken based on the GST treatment that you have provided at the transaction level and not at the contact level of the customers. So let's discuss on each and every row that we have under the overview page. The first is the B2B invoices. This will include the transactions whose GST treatment is given as registered. And the next is the B2C large invoices, which includes the outward supplies for interstate transactions of unregistered persons where the value is more than 2.5 lakh. Next is the export invoices, which will include the transactions if you have made sales for other countries. Next is B2CS, which includes outward supplies to consumers where the invoice value is less than 2.5 lakhs. If suppose you have a credit notes rates for the B2CS customers, then the value will be negated and only the summary will be pushed to the GST portal. That is, let's say if the invoice value is 10,000 and if you have created the credit note for 8,000, then only the 2,000 value will be pushed to the GST portal. Next is the exempted row, where you will be able to see the nil rated, tax exempted, non-taxable outward supplies. If you have created any credit note, debit note or refund vouchers for the respective reporting period, it will be listed here. Then the next is the advanced payments. Let's say if you have received any customer advances from your customer in this filing period, then those details will be listed under advance payments. Tax paid. Let's suppose you have received a customer advance in the previous filing period with the taxes, and if you are applying that particular advance in the current filing period, the tax amount will be displayed under the tax paid details. HSN summary will display all the HSN and SAC involved transactions and everything will be listed here. You can make use of this tip icon to know what type of transactions are involved under each tab. So here you will have an overview of all the transactions that are going to be pushed from the Zoho Books. The next will be push to GSTIN tab. So this tab is split into 5 parts, where all the transactions from the overview is moved to the push to GSTN tab. However, they are just splitted up. First, under the transaction summary tab, we have all the details as in the overview page. And the next is the HSN wise summary tab, where you can view the HSN wise summary of the items which you have sold for the respective period. And under nil returns tab, you can check the tax exempted transactions, and under B2CS tab, the e-commerce and other than e-commerce transactions will be grouped based on your place of supply, and this format is only supported from GST portal, and hence we also support the same format in Zoho Books as well. Next is the document issued tab. So the document issued tab is nothing but you have to enter the total number of transactions that you have raised for the respective financial period for which you are filing. For that, you have to first click on edit, and you have to enter the serial numbers manually from Zoho Books. Let's suppose you have multiple transaction series enabled, and you have to enter each and every transaction series separately. For that, you can make use of this clone button, where when you click on clone, it will be cloned, and you can enter your multiple series over here along with the serial numbers. Let me show you how you can take the series numbers or the invoice values for the respective period. You can just navigate to the respective invoices module and click on the advanced search button, where you can choose the date range for which you are filing the GSTR-1 returns. Let's suppose I am filing the GSTR-1 returns for November 1 to November 30. And when I click on search, all the related transactions will be listed, and here you can get the invoice value and the total invoice count as well. Now, once we are done with the document issued section, we can very well push the transactions to the GST. Once you click on push to GSTIN, you will have an option to generate the OTP, and then you will be notified when the transactions are pushed. Please note that if the transactions are pushed, you will not be able to edit those transactions in Zoho Books. Since we will be locking the transactions, you will not be able to edit them. Let's suppose if you want to make some changes in the transactions which is just pushed and not filed, you can make use of this reset push icon. So what will happen when you click on reset push icon is, all the transaction that has been already pushed to the GST portal will be deleted, and you can make the necessary changes and you can then push again. Let's suppose while pushing the transactions, you have got some failed transactions error, or some transactions which is been failed while pushing the transaction. Then all those details will be listed under the failed transaction. So this is how the failed transaction tab will look like. So in the failed transaction tab itself, we will be displaying what type of transaction it is, and what is the transaction date of the respective transaction, what is the error code, and even the error message will be displayed clearly. Most of the cases, the error message will be the GSTIN is invalid, please enter a valid GSTIN. So for such cases, we have to make sure that the customer's GSTIN is valid. And also there are cases where while generating the invoices, the GSTIN would be valid, and later the GSTIN may be made as inactive from your customer's end. So for such cases, make sure to check with your customers once, make the necessary changes in Zoho Books, and then you can push the transactions to GST portal from Zoho Books. So now we have covered all the options in the push to GSTN. Then once the transactions are pushed and once you receive the push successful notifications, then you can move on to file your returns tab. So here file your returns tab will help you to check the status of the push. So this check status option will help you to check what is the status of your push which I have done in the previous tab. Now, when the transactions are pushed to the GST portal, what are the transactions that has been pushed from Zoho Books will be listed in the overview page, and you can very well verify once before you file the returns from Zoho Books. So you can cross-check all the data that has been pushed from Zoho Books to the GST portal here. So when you are done with verification, you can click on File Now in Zoho Books. And as I have discussed on the approval option while setting up the Zoho Books, I'll show you how the approval works in File Your Returns tab. Let's say the GSTR-1 filing is waiting for approval. You'll get the Submit for Approval option here in the Overview tab as well as in the File Your Return tab. So only when you submit for the approval and only once your approver accepts the approval or checks the approval, then only you will be getting the File Now option. So once the approver is submitted, you will get an option to approve the return, or if your manager want to reject it, they'll get an option under the approve return tab. They can also reject it so that you can make the necessary changes again in Zoho Books and then you can file the returns again. There are cases where we might be clicking on submit approval option before checking or anything. So if you want to recall the return, you can also click on recall the return so that the submit for approval will be recalled. So as we are done with seeing how the approval works, then we will get on the file now option here. When you click on File Now option, the GST filing will be initiated and you will be notified in your email as well as the in-app notification once it is filed. Let me show you on the same. So once the transactions are filed from Zoho Books to the GST portal, you will have this tab called Filed. There are cases where you have to make some changes in the transactions or make some value adjustments in the transactions which are already pushed and filed in the GST portal. So what you can do for such cases is, first you have to navigate to GST portal, make the necessary amendments in the portal, and then you have to navigate to Zoho Books for the respective period and click on Mark as Unfiled. So when you click on Mark as Unfiled, the respective period will be unfiled. Then you will be able to make the necessary changes, and then you can click on Mark as Filed in Zoho Books. So when you click on File Now option, you will be navigated to the page where you will get an option to file the returns based on EVC or the DSC. So if you are moving with the EVC filing option, you will get the authorized signatory PAN where you have to enter the PAN and then click on Generate OTP. Moving on with the DSC filing, then always make sure that you have the Zoho Books Windows application and then you have to insert the dongle and then make sure the necessary files are available in the dongle, and then you can file the GSTR-1 returns from Zoho Books Windows application via the DSC method. Let me show how the amendments can be done in the GST portal if suppose you want to do any changes. So once you log into the GST portal, we have a separate amendment record details tab, under which we have 9A where amendment of B2B, B2C, export invoices can be amended separately. When you click on any of the tab, you will be navigate to the next page where you have to choose the financial year for which you have to make the necessary changes and then the invoice number for which you want to amend it. Once you enter those details, you have to click on amend record. Then clicking on amend record will navigate to the respective invoice where all the invoice details that you have pushed from Zoho Books will be listed and you can make the necessary changes. So with this, we have seen the steps how you can file the GSTR-1 returns directly from Zoho Books itself. Let's give a recap on what we have seen in today's session. First is you have to navigate to the GST portal setting, GST taxes settings in Zoho Books. Under online filing settings, make sure to enter the GSTIN username, reporting period, generate first tax return period and save all those details. Next will be you have to navigate to the GST filing tab. Under the overview page, you will get all the transactions that you have raised for the respective period which involves the taxes. You can have a view at the overview page and then you will have to push the transactions to the GSTIN, and once the push is successful, you can file your returns directly from Zoho Books itself. With this, we come to the end of the session and you can post if you have any questions in the questions tab. So we have a question here where how do you take an entry of a customer debit note on Zoho Books? Here let me show you. In the invoices tab under all invoices filter, you will get an option called debit note separately. So you can make use of this filter to get the debit note details for the respective period. If you are managing the branches in Zoho Books or if you have all the transactions with respect to the respective GSTIN, then you can very well have those transactions in Zoho Books and push them to the GST portal from Zoho Books itself. So if you are making any amendments in the GST portal, it will not have an effect in Zoho Books. So as I said in the session, you have to make the changes manually in the Zoho Books. So here we have a question where they say we have filed returns directly from GST portal up to now. So how can we file returns and show the payments made through Zoho from now onwards? So nothing. As I showed, you can navigate to the settings page in Zoho Books. You can choose the start the GSTR-1 filing return date as the next month or next quarter based on your organization's GST filing period, and then you can very well push the transactions from Zoho Books to GST portal itself. Always make sure that the transactions are created in the Zoho Books organization. Yes, I think you will be filing the returns directly in the GST portal. If suppose once you file the returns in the GST portal, you can very well click on mark as file in Zoho Book. We have a question where they say, can we make changes in GST once those are filed? As said, once the transactions are filed in the GST portal, you cannot even edit them. You have to make the necessary amendments in the upcoming filing period, and then you can mark them as unfiled in Zoho Books and make the necessary changes in Zoho Books as well. Yes, for this question, we do support multiple transaction series. You can make use of the multiple transaction series under the settings, and you can use those series in the document issued section as well. So if you have just pushed the transactions to the GSTN portal and not filed the returns, you can click on reset push button like how I showed in the session, and then you can make the necessary changes in Zoho Books and push the details again. So once you make the necessary changes which are given under the failed transaction tab, you can very well push the data again from Zoho Book. We do have an option to import the invoices in the invoice module. So we also support the Excel format. You can download the sample file from there and you can upload them directly in Zoho Books via Excel format. Here we have a question where they are using two branches with same GSTIN, and if you are using separate Zoho Books organization for each branches, then you will not be able to file the GSTIN directly from Zoho Books. So it has to be done manually at your end. Only if you are having the branches that are handled under the same organization, all the details will be pushed to the GST portal. So the mark as unfiled option will come on the last filing period only. Let's suppose your latest filed returns is on October and you are looking for the mark as unfiled option on the April, then you will not get it first. What you have to do is you have to unfile the returns on October, then September, and you have to come from back and you have to mark as unfiled till April to make the changes, and then again you have to mark as filed the returns from April to October. So we tried to answer all your queries from our end, and if we have missed any, you will be getting the email on the same. So if you have any queries, you can very well reach us at our toll-free number which is displayed below, and you can also reach us via email at support.india@zohobooks.com. Thank you everyone for joining the session. Have a great day.